All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's virtual plant clinic. I know we have been on a little break while all of us were getting our travels done for the summer. So we are back now. Happy to have you all today for a discussion of hydrangeas. I'm going to go ahead and get this passed over to David in just a second, but a quick reminder for everybody who is on Zoom who is new. If you have questions during the class, type those questions into the Q&A box, and I will be taking those and relaying them to David when he is able to take questions. So I think that's about all. David, I will go ahead and just let you dive right in.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking about hydrangeas. This is like a really amazing group of plants, diverse group of plants. Most of them, summer flowering shrubs kind of thing, but it's also a very confusing group of plants. So a lot of confusion, particularly when you get into their flowering characteristics, the kind of environment they grow in. And even though they're closely related, they have very, very different growing requirements. I'm going to say it's confusing enough that I don't want to call myself an expert. It's just I've been working with the plants for a few years, trying to figure it all out for myself. And we'll share what I know as best as I can up to date. But there's so many different hydrangeas. Every year, I feel like there's 20 new varieties introduced, that there is absolutely no way I'm going to even try to keep up to date on all the different cultivars and varieties that are out there. But the way I want to present it today is we actually here at the Garden Center, we sell 6 different species of hydrangeas. I'm only going to talk about 4 of them today. And for the most part, I'll be talking about Hydrangea macrophylla, or what's called the big leaf hydrangea. We also will have plenty of time for your questions. I have a total of 8 pictures to show you, so I know that there's going to be lots of questions because this is such a confusing group. So anywhere you need any kind of clarification, ideas, thoughts, whatever, just please type those in. Sally's monitoring all that in the chat, and hopefully we'll have time to cover everything in the 45 minutes we're spending here today. So as I said, I'm going to begin talking about Hydrangea macrophylla, or it's called big leaf hydrangea. It's the one that has these pretty snowball type blooms. It can be either pink or bloom that are in there, and they're kind of right at peak bloom right now, or just maybe slightly on the downhill side of it. The flower color on these can be influenced by the soil chemistry. When the plant starts to accumulate aluminum in the florets, like you see here, we start to get this blue coloration, and if it does not get the aluminum, then it takes on this pink coloration. So you'll see colors like this and colors in between. This little vase, this arrangement, one of my colleagues, Linda, that works here, she brought this in from her garden, so I don't know the exact varieties on that. This one over here, I'll show you this nice blue one. This is one that came out of my garden, cut these this morning. It's a variety, it's called Berlin, comes from what they call the city collection. They're named after different cities throughout the world. And these are grown specifically because they're more compact, small plants, and I didn't have much room to grow. What's interesting is in my garden, I go with a pink and yellow as my primary colors in there. So I've been treating this plant with lime to try to get it to pink. But it really wants to be blue. And I know a lot of you that want it to be blue and they come out pink. So it's a fun group of plant, but it can be frustrating too. But I'll keep with it. So that magnificent blue, I've been treating to get pink. So this is something all of us go through. But again, I've had fun with this and experiment with different pruning techniques and everything that goes on there. So what really kind of led me to talking about hydrangeas to start with was an email that I got. And I'm just going to read this to you. I get these things every day, but here is an example from a customer email. It says, I was at the plant clinic yesterday troubleshooting why my endless summer hydrangea has not bloomed in the past few years. It was suggested that I take a picture to better troubleshoot the problem Pictures are attached as instructed, and thank you. That is from KS. So this customer actually sent me 3 pictures. I chose to only put 2 of them up there because this is really the thing that happens to us all the time on the hydrangea macrophylla, and what leads to probably most of the questions and confusion and everything that occurs. So here we are, this customer, this is what her hydrangeas look like. And in all honesty, let me tell you, my hydrangea, I have these 2 beautiful flowers from, those are the only 2 flowers that I had on my plant as well. And this is the thing that will drive you crazy about them. What I want you to look at in this picture, a couple points in here. One is you see the spotting on this leaf, and I'll have a closer up image on it. This is a fungal leaf spot, which shows up. And this, again, hydrangeas, they get, this is one they call cercospora leaf spot. They get mildew, and sometimes they get thrips, sometimes they get mites. Actually, now I'm starting to see a little bit of cottony camellia scale showing up on. So they have some of these kind of pests, but that's really just a nuisance. That's not what's harming or interfering with the flowering. If you look really close in here, you start to see this dead stem that's in here. That gives me a pretty good clue as to why these plants are not flowering. Again, this is a little bit of a close-up on the same thing. So what happens with this particular type of hydrangea, and each one's different. So this is where it starts to get confusing. But the hydrangea macrophyllus, these have big blue and pink flowers. They, what we refer to as bloom on last year's wood. So what happens is this stem, this dead stem was formed, it grew in 2021, and the growth that occurs in 2021 is then supposed to flower for us in 2022. So all of these new shoots that are coming up now in 2022 should bloom for us in 2023, right? So when we see hydrangeas that are not flowering for us, we really have to think back in time as to what happened. So when I say they bloom off of old wood, those shoots that are produced this year will flower for you next year, right? But if anything injures that shoot, which could be you prune them at the wrong time, deer eat them, we get really severe cold temperatures that kills the stems. They start to grow early in the season, and then that gets followed by a late frost. Anything that goes wrong with that plant between basically now and next summer, boom, you lost your flowers. So what we've seen over the last several years is as our weather becomes way more sporadic and less predictable, our hydrangeas become more sporadic and less predictable. We go back to last winter, we in January, in early January, we're kind of cruising around mild temperatures at last fall and winter. Then early January, we dropped down into the teens, down probably like 16 degrees or so. Most of our hydrangeas are cold hardy to maybe 10 degrees. So when we get down into that low temperature, we're really kind of at the cold limits, the hardiness level for this type of hydrangea. So there could have been winter damage that occurred at that time. In March, we actually had 80 degrees and new growth started emerging early in the season in March. And then again, think back in Mother's Day, we went back down into the 30s. So it could have been that those new shoots started to develop and then got froze off of there. And this is what happens when that wood gets damaged or it gets injured, then your flowers just went bye-bye. So another thing I'm going to add to this conversation that adds a lot of confusion. So breeders several years ago started introducing what are incorrectly called and marketed as what they call reblooming hydrangeas. A rose, and I've talked this before, to me, in my book, in my language, a rose is a reblooming plant. A rose, it flowers for us in May. We prune those old roses up. It produces more flowers for us maybe in June. We prune those off, and 6 weeks later, maybe I have a new set of flowers. That's a rebloomer. In the world of hydrangeas, what we're saying is some of these hydrangeas, that are often called endless summer will flower off of both the last year's wood and the new wood. I have no idea if this is going to work, but I brought one in to see if maybe I could show this or explain it in picture. So this is what is referred to as a reblooming hydrangea. If you can see this, I don't know if you can, but this one flower that's on here, right, we follow this stem back, it is coming off of an old woody branch. This flower is coming off of last year's wood. So that's just like any other hydrangea does. Right alongside of it, you'll see these new shoots that are coming up. This one, this shoot that's growing this year, may flower for us again in late summer. So it's not a rebloom, it's both a primary bloom that happens for us usually in July, and what I call a secondary bloom for you that might happen as you get into August, September. But that late summer flower, from what I'm seeing here, they never develop as big, as prolific, or as showy as what the first set of blooms is. So that's kind of the reality to what's going on with our repeat blooming or endless summer types. So the idea is that, hey, if they get winter killed, the shoots can grow back and flower the same year. And that is true, but I think because of the weather conditions we have, they seldom materialize into the big showy kind of flowers that I have here. So what can we do about this? One of the things that I started doing a few years ago, because like I said, this didn't just start today, but I've actually started to put winter cover over my one little token hydrangea. And this is easy for me because I only have one plant. I realize with a bigger collection, it may not be as practical. But now, because of my frustration of having to deal with this for about past 3-4 years now, what I do in the wintertime is somewhere before Christmas in December, this is basically it's like a frost cloth. They call it a blanket, a plant blanket. But I will put this fabric blanket over there sometime usually around Christmas, and I will leave it on there all the way, quite honestly, until we get to almost May to protect it from the late frosts. And in doing that, when I'm actually responsible and follow through and do it, I get some pretty good success there by providing that additional winter protection. This also brings up, I'm going to say, a question about how do you prune these plants? And I don't have a really good answer for you. The way I do it is I actually hold off and I do my pruning around March time period. The buds begin to swell, they come out. Then I can tell what's living, what's dead. And in March, I will go through the plant and cut out, prune out, or thin any branches that are obviously dead, things that don't show any signs of life at all. And then maybe just the slightest amount of pruning I can get away with to just do a little bit of light shaping and tipping. Because basically I know that if I prune them more aggressively, that I'm going to lose flowers. I also had this idea last summer because the conventional wisdom, you'll read this in all the books that tell you, oh, well, you can prune them right after bloom, which I've always been a little skeptical on. I wanted to find out exactly what that means. So last summer, my one hydrangea you see here, I pruned it on July 28th, and guess what? No flowers. So I'm not real big on that idea. I think you've got a very, very small window of opportunity for summer pruning, and you kind of hate to take them off where they're still kind of in color. Now, another option, and I know I'm going through a bunch of stuff, we'll get some questions here, but another option is to maybe consider going with a different type of hydrangea. So this hydrangea that you see in the image here, this is called Hydrangea paniculata, or panicle hydrangea. They are flowering right now. They flower on new wood. So as a good example, where in the foreground here, you'll see this is our big leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea macrophylla, frustrating us, no flowers. That probably got killed back, and it regrows, but again, no blossoms here. But look at this one, the panicle hydrangea, just loaded up with blossoms. So these, I often say, can be treated very much like a crepe myrtle does. It takes a nice alternative to that. So Hydrangea paniculata, you can prune it back in the wintertime. You can take it back to whatever shape, size you want. It regrows, it fills back in, and it very reliably flowers for us in late summer. So more and more and more often, I see landscapers and professionals and designers using this Hydrangea paniculata because of its durability and its reliability. It's not fussy about its location. It will grow in full sun. It will grow in part shade. Has a few pest problems, but not as extensive. But most of all, it's almost a foolproof plant. You can prune it as you want, when you want. It regrows, it reblooms. And the other thing that's nice is there are a lot of new varieties out there. There's a lot of them that are starting to get some pink coloration in it. And you'll kind of see, let me see, I can maybe show you this one that's behind me. If you can see this right behind me, this is one that's called Little Quickfire. Probably not showing real well because historically they have always been white. A lot of you know PG hydrangea, which has been around for many, many years. PG is Hydrangea paniculata grandiflora. That's where it gets its name. But this, you'll see, is what they call Quickfire. It blooms white, but it's pretty much, you can start to see a little bit of a rose-colored pink, and then it will start to go to a pink coloration. So we're getting a proliferation of different varieties that are out there for us now to look at, giving us more options that we have in landscape. And these guys are just about foolproof. This is a variety in here. This picture is taken down American University, the Hydrangea paniculata that is called Limelight. And it gets this almost chartreusey light green color. This is what really kind of, to me, broke the field wide open, and it started getting a little bit of color selection. They tend to get big. A lot of these hydrangeas can get 12, 14 feet tall and big. So now the breeders have developed ones that stay smaller. So you can get things like Little Lime, like I said, the Little Quickfire. So they got a lot of choices out there. And we have different colors, basically from sort of a white to sort of this light green. And we're getting some pink colorations going on there. And then I'm going to show you one more, and then I will stop and take a few questions for you. So this is another group of hydrangeas that certainly are deserving of your attention. So this one is, again, Hydrangea arborescens. And I keep throwing these names out at you because when you come in, a lot of our guessing game begins with, okay, which hydrangea are we talking about? Because again, they have different growing requirements and different issues that go as far as pest management. But so smooth hydrangea, Hydrangea arborescens, is our native hydrangea. When they're just growing out in the woods and the forest, and you can find them, their little flowers, clusters of flowers are probably only about 25% of the size that you see here. So there was one that was discovered many years ago. I think it was in Illinois. It was given the name Annabelle, and Annabelle has been dominating the marketplace for decades. So Annabelle, it's our native smooth hydrangea. It grows in a woodland environment, which means it does best in kind of part shade, part sun. This is like the big leaf hydrangea and the smooth hydrangea do not want to go out in hot, sunny environments. They appreciate a little bit of shade and protection and somewhat moist conditions. But this is a very reliable, very dependable bloomer because it flowers off of new woods. So, and the same year, new growth comes out starting in April. There's kind of April, May, June, and then boom, in July, they kind of start reliably flowering. So if this gets browsed down by deer, or if it gets cut back, by a landscape maintenance company, or inadvertently by the husband or somebody, if it gets pruned or cut back, this will regrow and rebloom for you the same year. So this is another fantastic, reliable hydrangea for landscapes. The thing, again, that's been limiting it is it pretty much was only available in a white color. Now the marketplace, again, has responded, and these plant breeders start coming out with new varieties, new colors come out. There's Annabelle, and then they had one I think called Invincibelle, which even had bigger flowers. Sometimes they get too big and start to flop over, is a little bit of a complaint. This is one that's new to me. So new, I just blanked out on the name of it. But it's after this flower color, kind of pink coloration that's in there. Mauvette, that's what it is. So they call, because kind of mauve color that's in the flower, you can see this. So this is an example. This is the Hydrangea arborescens. It is our native one, but it's one that's selected for kind of mauve coloration in the flower and the density of growth. So again, this is kind of broadening our horizon as far as color selection goes, and some of these somewhat more durable, reliable, easier care kind of hydrangeas. So that's my little introduction. I'm going to stop here, take a few questions, and I do have oak leaf hydrangea in my setup, but we'll talk about that after we get a few questions. All right, so how are we doing, Sally?
We have a lot of questions coming in, David. Lots of interest in hydrangeas. So first question, and you may be covering this later, so if you're going to do that, then just let me know. We've had a couple of questions come in about timing for fertilizing and what products to use.
Okay, so hydrangeas, you always hear me say fertilizers kind of like vitamins. If they have nice, good green growth on them, they're flowering, the plants are doing well, they don't necessarily require that you fertilize them. If they're not doing well, if they don't have good coloration and stuff, where they're not blooming well, then we can hit them with really any kind of flowering plant food. Now, one of the things I'm going to say again with this hydrangea, you can play around with fertilizers and influence their color. So for example, I'm trying to show you, this is from Jack's Classic. They call, hydrangea blue. So it's a water soluble fertilizer that you mix with the watering can, fertilize the plants with it, and this helps bring out the blue coloration. You can change hydrangea color pretty quickly. If you're growing hydrangeas in pots and containers, like some of the florist hydrangeas, I've seen been able to get color change starting as quickly as 2 weeks. More realistically, it's going to take 4 weeks. My long-winded answer here is whenever somebody comes in asking about hydrangeas, I'm usually responding, what type of color are you after? Are you trying to change it? So if I want to bring out kind of this more blue coloration, I might use something like the hydrangea blue or even holly tone. If I'm looking just to maintain the color or more neutral, basically any of the rose fertilizers that you use would do just as well. I like to fertilize in early spring when the growth first begins, usually about the first part of April. Okay. And then if you want to push a little more growth, you will come back and fertilize them again, 4 to 6 weeks after that. We can do it again in June. Right now, I'm going to say we're kind of late in the season to talk about fertilizing them right now. That's something I'd rather do in kind of April, May, June time period. Got
it. Can you get purple from those hydrangeas, or is that just like kind of a bluish color that kind of looks purple? People want purple.
You can, now there's also differences in varieties. Not all of them respond quite as well. And that's where you'd have to kind of do a little homework in the variety selection. But the answer is yes, you can get purple. If I wanted to, even this blue one, if I continued to fertilize it with like that Jack's hydrangea blue, I can intensify that blue color and get probably close to a purple on that. But there are some varieties that respond better than others, but I can't give you an exact name. We'd have to look into that a little bit.
Okay. I know you've said some people grow hydrangeas in pots. Are there any varieties that are better? Do you have any tips for doing that?
Well, one thing I want to caution you about, that's why I mentioned a lot of times if you go into the grocery store or into the greenhouse and you buy a hydrangea and it's flowering in February, that is a greenhouse produced plant that was developed for its floral production and forced into bloom off season. That plant may or may not be reliably cold hardy as a landscape plant. So one I'm going to say is putting hydrangeas in pots. They really should be sheltered outdoors because we are kind of on the limits. We're at the limits as far as their cold hardiness goes. So you can do it, but keep them sheltered or protected during the winter time to insulate them against the cold. This particular one, again, that I'm growing in my yard, called the City series, all of them stay compact. They're staying down at maybe 3 foot tall, 3 foot wide, so it would go into a large container. But I'd probably be looking at that series, and they come in different colors. But look in the City series, and I have names like Berlin, Paris, so on, and put in a large pot and protect it in the winter.
Okay. Okay, talking about the types of hydrangeas, you showed the paniculatas. One was the limelight, is that correct?
Right.
That's paniculata, and what was the other one? The one
The other over my shoulder here, this is called Little Quickfire. There's a Quickfire. Quickfire can probably easily get 8 feet or bigger on me.
I've seen one that was about 12 feet.
Yeah, it probably could easily. This is they call Little Quickfire. It's kind of a new introduction. The company claims it's going to stay down more like 4 or 5 feet tall. But again, these are pretty easy to prune if you're worried about them getting too big.
Got it. Okay.
But they got like strawberry shortcake is another name that's out there. I lose track of them all. There's
so many. There's so many. All right. So next question. How do we know which species we have in the ground? Like they specifically ask about endless summer. So can you tell the difference between like an endless summer versus a non-endless summer by looking at it? Maybe.
I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but the leaves do look distinctively different. They feel different. I don't know if you can see this in here, but this is they call Hydrangea macrophylla. It's not going to show up on your screen, I don't think. They probably look identical. It's in there, but this is a very waxy leaf. If you could feel
it has more of a sheen on it, I think.
Yeah, you might be able to see that in there, but this, all I can tell you is if you could feel this leaf, you'd say, oh, this is a very waxy. I mean, it feels almost artificial, like a waxy leaf on here. This one's actually what we call a little scariest. It's got a little bit of a rough, almost fuzzy surface to it. And as Sally's saying, it's not quite this kind of a flat coloration. So yeah, it's kind of hard to tell apart in your screen, but we can tell them apart by looking at the leaf characteristics. Again, you can see their flower characteristics are pretty similar. But again, if you could feel this one, the stem is smooth and waxy. This one is kind of rough and scariest. So yeah, just looking at here, it's a little hard to tell apart.
Okay, got it. That's fine. Let's see. Okay, here's a question about backed fertilizer. This person uses a fish emulsion for their flowers for their hydrangeas. Is there a daytime temperature at which you don't recommend fertilizing? It sounds like if you're saying in the spring, it may not be as much of an issue, but
the real thing is you'll hear a lot of times people say, oh, don't fertilize in the summer. What really they're saying is we don't fertilize drought stressed plants, because if a plant is in drought stress, if it's dry, then the salts from the fertilizer are actually competing with the plant for water. One of the things that I try to clarify is if it's in a managed landscape where we're caring for our plants and we're watering them during dry spells, I don't have a real problem necessarily with summer fertilization. So there's not an absolute cutoff on this. It's a part of your overall management technique, but really, for the most part, hydrangeas are pretty much at their peak growth right now. I mean, they flowered, they bloomed. There's not a whole lot of need to fertilize them beyond this point in summer. But if you wanted to, like I said, you're particularly like fish emulsion, which is a kind of a low strength organic fertilizer, I have no hesitation about doing that, other than the qualifier that not if it's in a drought stress condition.
Got it. Okay. All right. Next question. We can keep going as long as you want. If you want to move.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock here, and then I'll.
Okay. I've got 2 questions on oak leaf hydrangea. I'm going to skip those until you go over oak leaf. So we see your questions there. We'll keep them for after David covers that. Next question. How do you stagger varieties for extended bloom? So if someone wants to keep the hydrangea blooms going, do they bloom at different times? Which varieties would you plant?
They do bloom at different times. Like I said, one that is not in my slide set because it's just we only have so much time. But usually, like the first one to bloom is a climbing hydrangea, but we're not even going to show that's actually a vine form that's on there. Oak leaf, which we haven't seen yet, that's going to flower more towards May, and then you're going to start to see sort of like your macrophylla types like this maybe start kicking in June, July, and that will overlap somewhat with the others. But you can kind of stagger them with different types of hydrangeas, and some of the we call the paniculata types, they'll keep going into September time period, so they kind of wrap the year up.
Yeah, I know, I've seen those out in the garden center pretty late in the summer. Okay, next question. Deer on an Annabelle hydrangea. I spray my Annabelle hydrangea with deer repellent every couple of weeks, and the deer have left it alone. But this year they're eating it despite alternating that's not good. Despite alternating repellent such as liquid fence and deer off. A fence is not an option. Do you have any other solutions to keep the deer from eating her Annabelle hydrangea?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there is a little bit of trial and error that's just going to go on when you're dealing with the deer. And I've mentioned this a few times because that's one of the weak points with the hydrangeas, that the deer will browse on them. With that in mind, I mean, I brought in what's called Bob-X.
Yeah, that's Peg's favorite.
Yeah, Liquid Fence and Bob-X to me have been our two most reliable. We've been selling both of these for about over 20 years. And I tend to rotate between these two. Deer off, again, I'm not saying anything bad about it, but it hasn't proven to be quite as effective as some of the others.
Okay.
But I think it's just going to be a little bit of trial and error. You're doing the right thing. You must have just really heavy feeding pressures in there, I mean, a high population of deer, limited food. Plus deer, their tastes can vary between what we call different families. That's probably the wrong word. But their tastes can vary also. So there's a lot of variables there, but maybe give Bob-X a try.
All right, so try Bob-X, and I'm sorry they're eating your hydrangeas with so much work. All righty, next question. What is the optimum pH? I think this is for the macrophylla. I use acidifier and usually end up with a mixture of pink, blue, and purple to light gray blooms.
Yeah, because if you want to bring out a pink color, I'm going to say we definitely want to stay at about 6.5 or above. And if we want to bring out a blue color, we're going below kind of 6.5. So if you're looking for really trying to get a deep blue color, you probably need to get all the way down to maybe something like a 5.0 range. And if I want to bring out a nice pink color, I might even go as high as 8. And like I said, I don't have an answer for you when you'll start to see all three colors or different variations showing up on the same plant. Some of it is just experimenting and just learning to appreciate what you have.
Okay, got it.
But like I said, I've been applying lime to this one, and well, I slacked off. I mean, I had pink at one point, and in the last 2 years, I kind of backed off, and now it's gone back to blue.
It just really wants to be blue.
Yeah. Let's look at the oak leaf hydrangea, and then we'll open back up for questions. So this will be quick. Oak leaf hydrangea, it's really, of all these, I'm going to tell you this is my personal favorite. So this is Hydrangea quercifolia, because the leaf on that, if you could see it close enough, kind of resembles the leaf of an oak tree, and which is in the genus Quercus. So this hydrangea, it's native to the southeastern U.S., so it's a U.S. native, but not necessarily a Virginia native, but they'll grow down in Georgia and the Carolinas and such. So it's a very sturdy plant. It does flower off of last year's wood, which means to you, right now, at this point in time, it's kind of wrapping up its bloom season and beginning to form shoots and set buds for next year. So the pruning on this is also a little bit messy. So you try to pick a variety that maybe has room to grow and doesn't require a lot of pruning, because whatever you do seems like it's going to interfere with the flowering on. But this is just, again, to me, a drop dead gorgeous plant. Mine flowers for me right in May. But even after flowering, these blossoms hang onto the plant all the way through winter. And so even though they're kind of dried up, they add a lot of interest to it. I love the big coarse textured leaf that's in there, and they have beautiful fall color where it kind of goes into a deep burgundy coloration in there. So that's one of the things I say, this is one of my favorites because, hey, I've got a really interesting coarse leaf texture. I've got, to die for blooms on that fall coloration, interesting form, and even it gets a little bit of peeling, exfoliating bark as we go into the winter. This is probably one of the older varieties, big varieties that's called, I think this is probably Alice. Again, the one that I'm growing in my little garden is a variety, it's called Munchkin. Munchkin, I'm in love with this plant. I've probably had it in my garden for maybe 5 years now, and it is staying small. It's still under, it's maybe getting close to 4 feet tall. It's probably only about 3.5 feet tall and about 3 feet wide that's in there. So this picture is probably taken in May when it was right in full bloom. So it's really doing the job for me there in a small, compact area. One of the dilemmas that happens is this, I took some cuttings for you, sacrificed it for our show. This is, took these cuttings this morning, and this is what I'm saying. It is past its peak bloom. And you probably can't really see too well in here, but I'll try to show you. And these new growth, these are the shoots that are coming up. And these are the shoots that are going to form flowers or form buds for me next summer. So you might see some recommendations that go out there and tell you to prune it now. And I have to tell you, I think about a month ago, I was on the air, and I made a commitment and told everybody I have the resolve that I'm going to go out and prune my oak leaf this summer. I chickened out because when it came down to it, I should be pruning it right now. I should be pruning it like this weekend or last weekend. But how can I bring myself to cut these flowers off when I know they're going to continue to take on this kind of russet color that you begin to see developing right now? They take this beautiful color and they're going to hold on there all the way through winter. So this is all I could cut off it. I just couldn't bring myself to do more. Maybe this winter I'll do a little bit of thinning on it, but I can just do a little bit of thinning because almost any time that you go out there to prune it, you are going to interfere with flowering. Now, when I all this emphasis on pruning, none of this hurts the plants. On the macrophyllus, the quercifolia, wherever, the plant will grow back, but it can cost you blooms. And that's where we kind of get into a big deal about when to flower. Again, these guys will get leaf spot pretty bad. That's an annoyance. So we get leaf spot diseases, and we have plenty of samples coming to clinic with that now. They're just spots and blemishes, a little bit of unsightliness, but it doesn't really hurt the health of the plant. A lot of times I get people try to learn to live with that or accept it, or if it is getting to a point where it's really becoming a problem, we have a choice. We can intervene with something like this fungicide like Daconil. So I just try to let you know that these plants might require a little bit more care than some things in your garden, but they are well worth the attention. So that's all I have to say about hydrangeas, and we'll go back to whatever questions, comments, ideas everybody else has.
All righty, great. Back to questions. All right, this person has a huge oak leaf hydrangea, 6 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide, and the panicles are over 12 inches when it blooms. Some space has opened up around this plant, which she's had for 10 to 15 years. So she wants to know, when she's planting stuff around it, how much space does she need to leave around the roots for the plant to protect it and make sure it stays healthy?
I'd want to stay outside the drip line. So I'm saying, hey, if this thing, can't remember exactly, said, let's say it spreads out 8 feet wide, I don't want to try to grow anything underneath of it. Because you would be cutting roots, you would be injuring roots, and it's a difficult environment. But really, they're pretty resilient plants. Anything from the edge of that plant on, you can plant in that area. Eventually, the oak leaf's going to continue growing because these plants, they just grow right up until the day they die. So if you want to leave, if you can leave, another foot or two to leave some room for additional growth, that's a good idea. You can prune them. All my fussing about pruning, though, is you will interrupt the flowering for that 1 year if you go in and do some pruning on it.
Okay, so for the oak leaf, basically to get the blooms and to prune, you're gonna end up interrupting.
Yeah, if you prune it right now, you're cutting your bloom season short. And if you wait and prune it after flowering or this winter, then you just cut your buds off.
Okay, so okay, yeah. So if you just know when you're pruning, you're probably gonna reduce or eliminate your flowers for the next year. There's no way around it.
Yeah, exactly. And you just
we've got questions about that. So
you just gotta kind of set your priorities and go with it.
All righty. Next question is a quick one. The oak leaf hydrangea that you brought in, what is the one that you're growing?
It's called Munchkin.
Munchkin. Okay.
And what I'm getting out of it is like really nice, good, full-sized flowers, leaf. It's just that the plant grows is very compact. It's like a slow grower. It just puts on a few inches of growth each year. So it's, like I said, it's just part of a little townhouse garden, and I've been thrilled with it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any oak leaves? I know that one turns that russet color. Do you have any others that have some color that you would suggest?
There's a new one out. I'm gonna ruin the name. I told you these varieties. Ruby Slippers. That's where I knew it would come. So you might also look at, this wasn't available. I might have looked at it now, but Ruby Slippers is a compact one. It's supposed to be about the same size and stature as like the Munchkin is, but it's going to go much quicker. It's going to go to a pink color for you. But yeah, we're basically just talking white and pink right now.
Okay. All righty. Next question. For full sun white hydrangeas, what are your best options?
So I would say definitely your very best choices were they're called the panicle hydrangea or hydrangea paniculata, which are kind of like what's over my shoulder here. There's a lot of varieties of them. They're both based on size and color. So for example, Limelight is one of the most popular ones, and it is durable and it's prolific and it's gorgeous, and there's a lot of good things to say about it. They can get pretty big, easily 8 feet plus. But there's also ones called Little Lime that stay smaller. But just keep an open mind on that, because when I give you a name like that, there's others, but it's going to really depend a lot on your preferences in terms of what colors you're looking for and how much space you have for it to grow. But okay, you can put them out in the full sun, absolutely.
Got it. What about the oak? Are the oak leaves are they more of a woodland environment preference, or do they like can they handle?
They will go into full sun, but where they do their really best is part sun, part shade.
Okay, so the panicle, really, if you're in full sun, that's the best choice.
I think it is. Again, I've seen oak leaf growing out in full all day sun, and seen it do pretty good, pretty well. But it's probably does its best where it gets a little bit of shelter from the real hot sun.
Okay. All righty. Let's see. I'm gonna go through here and try to.
I will, since we're on that. The other two, like what they call the macrophyllus, with the pink and the blue flowers. Even those that are advertised and sold as sun tolerant plants, I'm telling you, right? My words are going to say don't do it. They really should be in the sun. I'm going to say by 12 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because if you put them out in the full sun, they wilt, they struggle, they don't look happy. You start getting scorch on them in spite of what the tags tell you. And I'm also going to say, like these, the native one, the smooth hydrangea here, I would much rather get them under a little bit of shade, a little bit of protection, in spite of whatever tags are marked. This one's advertised as going out in full sun when you read it on the tag, but I personally would not do that or recommend it.
All right, let's see here. I know we're running up on time here. And there was one that I wanted to check on. Oh, okay. Question just came in. Should you wait until the fall to plant a new hydrangea, or could you plant like now, or when should you plant?
Oh, I have no hesitation at all about planting in the summer. My feelings are any time you put a new plant in, you just have to be responsible for the watering. I'm like a broken record, but established plants, say they got roots going out everywhere, and when it's raining, snowing, they get all that moisture. On a new plant, comes in a pot this big, somebody has to be able to make sure they get water directly on that root ball. So if you're planting in July, it just means, hey, if you're going away for a 2-week vacation, somebody's going to take ownership on the watering there. One of the advantages I'll say is, hey, if I'm planting in July, this gives the plant a few months to kind of get rooted in there well before fall comes. And so it's pretty well established going into winter. A lot of people prefer planting in the fall because temperatures are cooler. It's a little more forgiving on watering, a little less stressful on the plant. So I'm good either way. I'll qualify that a little bit. The hydrangea macrophyllus, again, the pink and blue flowers, we're really kind of at the limits of their cold hardiness. So they are somewhat susceptible to winter damage. That's one that you might do better in the spring or summer planting on that.
Give it longer to get established.
Exactly.
That makes sense. All right, we're at 2:46. So I'm going to just give some quick reminders to everybody. We did definitely not get to all the questions. I'm sorry, we can't just go on and on. We would love to, but if you want to follow up with us, you can hit reply to your confirmation email. Those go directly to my inbox. So I'll share those with David, and he can get back in touch with you with any questions you have about your hydrangeas or selecting anything you have questions about. He'll get back to you about it. And I did see one question about cut and dried flowers. If you want to email me, same thing. But I have a colleague, Peg, who does a lot with dried flowers. Unless, David, you've taken up a hobby for drawing hydrangeas, then
I'll talk to Peg about that, but hydrangeas are fantastic dried flowers.
Yes, I know. I've seen some really cool things she's done with that. Okay, yeah, so send us those questions. We're happy to answer them. We have recorded this class, so if you want to follow up with us, it'll go on our YouTube channel, and you can always request the link from me. David, do you want to end with anything else?
No, I haven't decided what we're doing next, but I'm sure there's always something going in the garden. And again, stop by the nursery, take a look at the plants. A lot of times these plants look much better in your garden than they do in the nursery. So keep an open mind on. Again, there's so many to choose from. Take time, do your homework. They're all fantastic in their own way.
All right. Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. And David, thanks as always for joining us and doing this program for us.